I'm James Barfield, and this is your Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. Okay? Now, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we're trying to get the subscribe numbers up to 1,000, ladies and gentlemen. I need your help. So hit that subscribe button and the notification button. Now, you know, Don Lemon appears to be trying to join his buddy, T.J. Holmes, on the unemployment list. And here's what I mean. Don Lemon, who just, what has it been, maybe 60, probably less than 90 days that he was taken off of his prime time gig where he had the Don Lemon show, and some say demoted, even though he denies it, but he was placed on the early morning show with two female co-hosts, Poppy Harlow and Caitlin, I can't remember her last name. But anyhow, on Wednesday, they had, no, I believe it was Thursday. Thursday, they had a guest on the show, a woman who goes by the name of Nikki Haley. Now, Nikki Haley, you know, is a conservative Republican woman who was a former governor of South Carolina. She has announced, and she announced on Wednesday, that she is putting her hat or her name in the ring to be a candidate on the Republican ticket for president in 2024. Now, she is the second Republican candidate to join the ranks, and the other one, of course, being Donald Trump. Now, Nikki Haley, during the conversation, made a comment about the fact that men over 75 should be forced to take a cognitive test once they reach 75. She said they're past their prime. Well, it was kind of interesting because Don's comeback on that, he first said talking about age makes him a little bit uncomfortable. But he went on to say that, hey, Nikki Haley should not be talking about, she's 51, by the way. Nikki Haley should not be talking about anybody in their prime because, using his words, Nikki Haley is past her prime. And Pappy Harlow says, well, wait a minute, what do you mean? And Don said, well, hey, women are in their prime in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. She's past her 40s, so she's not in her prime. Well, that didn't sit too well with the two female co-hosts and a lot of other females in the viewing audience. So Don said, well, look, I'm just quoting Google. He said, take a look at Google. Google defines a woman in her prime as being in her 20s, 30s, and 40s. Well, anyhow, that didn't go over very well. So what happened was Pappy Harlow, after a little bit of further conversation, got up and walked off the set, claiming to be totally offended by Don's comments. Well, it escalated. After she walked off the set, the show continued, but the damage had been done. Now, mind you, that this comes almost less than a month, I believe, since Don Lemon offended his other female co-host when he allegedly raised his voice, some will say screamed at her while on the air, causing her to be offended. Yeah, the thing is here, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand, Don is becoming more and more of a detraction to that morning show than he needs to be. And Don's going to have to learn to be very careful of how he walks and talks. Because you see, I say that because when this talk about Haley not being in her prime, when that was brought up to the president of the news division, he said that Don's words were unacceptable. Now, I don't know what that actually means in reality. I don't know how far they want to take that, but I do know this. On Friday's show, Don was absent. On today's show, Don was absent once again. And there's a rumor that Don might or might not be returning to that morning show, or maybe to CNN at all, depending on his attitude. Now, Don's a long time. Don's been with CNN since, I believe, 2006. He had, as I said, for a number of years, he had a primetime show in the 9 o'clock, I believe it was the 9 o'clock Central Standard Time hour, just before Chris Cuomo. And you know, Chris Cuomo was forced out, what, a year ago, something like that. But anyhow, so Don Lemon is walking on thin ice right now. And that is if he does come back to the morning show or to any other position or time slot at CNN, Don's going to have to walk and tread very carefully. Because I can tell you right now, he already has 2 strikes against him, and maybe 3 if you consider his removal from his primetime show as a count. That would be 3 strikes, okay? But without that, he's got 2 strikes. First of all, he offended the one female individual, and then now he's come back and offended 2 other females, plus many females and some males, I might add, in the viewing audience. Now, some are calling for him to be fired or resign. I don't see him resigning over this. He has apologized. Some don't like the tone of his apology. They consider it not very much of an apology at all, but he recognizes that he made a mistake, he misspoke, and he doesn't know, and I don't know either, and maybe even the president of the news department doesn't know what the consequences will be for making another mistake, especially so soon after he made his first mistake. But they are saying that he has become a distraction from the morning show. And let me tell you, the morning show has plenty of tough competition. And so CNN is battling without the mistakes, without the distractions of Don Lemon. CNN is struggling to stay in the ratings game because right now you're talking about Good Morning America on ABC, you're talking about the Today Show on NBC, and what else you've got on? I forget the name of the program you've got on Fox. So it's very competitive in that 5 to 9 a.m. time slot. Now, what Don should have done, in my opinion, because see, he mentioned, I mean, Miss Haley, mentioned that she was basically targeting her remarks toward Joe Biden, who is 78. But what she failed to mention, intentionally, by the way, was that her opponent on the other side, Donald Trump, is 76. She didn't mention him at all, okay? She had nothing to say about him. So what Don should have focused on was, in my opinion, was 2 things. Number one, he should have focused on the fact that she's not running against Joe Biden, even though that's what she said. She just entered a primary, which would, if she were to win the nomination, that would give her the right to run against Joe Biden, should he run, and I'm sure he will. But right now, she's not running against Joe Biden. She's not won a single primary in any primary state. She's running against Donald Trump and any other Republicans that get in the primary here. So you would think a former governor, a former US ambassador, a woman who thinks she's God's gift to earth, you would think that she would have enough knowledge about the political process to understand that she's not running against Joe Biden. She's running for the right to run against Joe Biden. And I'm sure that Joe Biden would welcome that. All right. Now, the other side of the coin is, Nikki Haley, for some reason or other, continues to lie. I mean, I'm going to use that word. She continues to lie about her feelings about racism in the United States. First of all, she totally acknowledges that when her parents immigrated here, they faced all kinds of discrimination, racial discrimination. She wants to pretend that didn't happen when she herself said it. Now, she wants to pretend America is not a racist country when she announced on last Wednesday night that she was going to run for the president. Before she could get the words out of her mouth, another female Republican, Ann Coulter, suggested that she should go back to where she came from, go back to her own country. Is that not considered racist, Mrs. Haley? I mean, are you that totally unaware or unable to acknowledge racism when you see it and when you hear it? Because that clearly is a dog whistle for racism. Go back to where you came from. So let's get it together. And I know that you want to, you've been wishy-washy. One moment you were for Trump, another moment you were against Donald Trump. One moment you were for Trump, another moment you were against Donald Trump. One moment you said we should never have elected him in the first place. The next time you're talking about how great he is. Which is it, Nikki Haley? Which is it? Are you for Trump or are you against Trump? Or are you trying to play the middle because you're not running to be the president, you're running to be the vice president to who you hope will be the nominee on the Republican side, Donald Trump. That's what you're really running for. You're not really running to be the president because you don't have what it takes to be the president. Okay? You're never going to win the nomination. Because I can tell you right now that there are some people that will be entering this race that are polling much better than the 1% that you're polling at. And I've never seen a candidate in my lifetime go from 1% to being the nominee of either party, either Republican or Democrat. So unless you intend to run on an independent ticket, you're never going to be in the tops for the nomination of any party. 1% won't cut it. And I'll tell you another thing that's working against you. You see, you cannot go and win the nomination or win a presidential race when everything you do, within 30 minutes, you will come back and contradict yourself and take a different position, depending on which way the wind is blowing on that particular day. That's not how you win the nomination or win the presidency, Nikki Haley. So I would suggest you either learn how to run a race, learn who it is that you're running against, because you're not running against Joe Biden at this time, and I suggest you probably never will. But until you do, you're going to have problems, and you're going to have a lot of people coming after you, because when they talk about Joe Biden is gaffe prone, honey, you're a close second, if not ahead of Joe Biden, because you will make a gaffe in a minute, and you will contradict yourself in a hot minute. And basically, I just say this. Don Lemon wasn't too far off when he said, you're not in your prime. Your best days politically are behind you. Okay. As for Don Lemon, if Don Lemon, I'm going to say this, if Don Lemon is not on that show tomorrow morning, he won't be back on that show. That's my prediction. I could be wrong, but it doesn't look good at this time. So Don, my advice to you would be, if you don't show your face tomorrow morning on CNN, on the early morning show, you get on the phone and talk to your buddy, TJ Holmes, and see if you can join him and Amy down in Mexico, if that's where they're still at. Okay. All right, folks, that's my show. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button. I'm out.